Welcome to Amazing Business Radio with best-selling author and customer service and business expert, Shep Hyken. Shep will talk with some of the smartest thinkers in business to help make you more successful in your professional and personal life. This is Amazing Business Radio with Shep Hyken.
Hello, everyone. Shep Hyken here, back with another episode of Amazing Business Radio. Excited about our interview this week with Mita Mallick, the author of The Devil Emails at Midnight, What Good Leaders Can Learn from Bad Bosses. If you are listening to this episode, the day it comes out, you will be able to purchase the book through Amazon. It might be a pre-order. I think you're going to love the book. After that, of course, the book will be available. It is a phenomenal book. If you have anybody reporting to you, if you're an executive leader, manager, supervisor of any type, if anyone is reporting to you, this is a must-read book. All right, quick announcement before we get into the interview. If you've got an amazing story or question you want to ask, please reach out to me on any social channel. I'm pretty much everywhere. If it is a question, please use the hashtag Ask Shep. And if you would like to subscribe to my weekly newsletter, the Shepherd Letter, please reach out to hyken.com. That's my website. Just go there, sign up, and while you're there, check out my annual research. You just click on the link, it downloads immediately. You will love it. It's got facts and findings about the way customers think about all types of businesses. This is information you must have to make great customer-focused decisions. All right, let's jump into our interview with Mita Mallick. Mita, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
So this is an exciting book. I love the title of the book that you if you're listening to the show, you will either be pre-ordering it or getting it right as the book comes out. But this title, The Devil Emails at Midnight. Now, that is your nightmare. The boss going, I need this information now.
Yes.
And I guess they expect that you would be awake at midnight, 1, 2, 3 in the morning. But I think it's a great metaphor for everything that's about the book. And you've listed a number of different types of bosses throughout the book. And I know you have included yourself in the book as maybe not the best boss, but I'm excited to talk about it. Quick little background on yourself. You are working with different clients who are leaders and you're coaching them. You're speaking all over the world about the book. Very exciting stuff, but tell us a little background about yourself. So leading up to this book, what did you do and why did you write the book?
Yeah, I've been both a marketing executive and HR executive. I thought about, all the different ways that we try to reach the external customer. And then I thought about, what about our employees? Sometimes they're a forgotten consumer, aren't they? And
boom,
they're
exactly.
most important stakeholder. And so I transitioned to do that work. And I'm on a mission to fix what's broken in our workplaces. I'm writing books, I'm speaking, I'm coaching, consulting. And of course, the most important job I have is trying to raise kind and inclusive human beings, which I'm sure every generation of parents had the same struggle. But it's a hard time to be doing that. Yes.
How many kids and how old are they?
A 10-year-old daughter going on 20 and a 12-year-old son going on 22. So I am open to all unsolicited parenting advice.
Well, once they both hit the teenage years, somehow or another, the brains get sucked out of them completely.
Okay.
So you as a parent help put them back in.
Okay. Good to know. We're sort of there with my son.
I know. Good luck.
Yeah.
That's great. All right. So this book is the reason I like this book and why I thought it was appropriate for the show was it talks about internal ways employees are treated by their bosses.
Yes.
And the people who've listened to me know I have this huge idea that what happens on the inside of a company or organization is felt on the outside by customers. Internal service, and you mentioned that as you had kind of given your background, the idea of taking care of customers is, to me, the beginning. I'm sorry, taking care of employees, is the beginning of taking care of customers. You cannot expect people to behave any differently than the way they are treated on the inside.
Absolutely.
So let's go ahead and jump into the content and talk about like some of the different types of bosses. Maybe we'll hit 2 or 3. We'll take a break, come back and hit a few more.
Sure. Well, I'll start with the title. Everyone's really interested in that. The Devil Emails at Midnight, What Good Leaders Can Learn from Bad Bosses. One of my first experiences in corporate America, the book opens with this, is the boss who never had time for me except at midnight. I was like the golden retriever chasing around the office. I just wanted time with her. I was loyal. I wanted her to see me, value me, say hi to me. I even chased her into the parking lot once. Like she just did not have time for me, except between the hours of 10 p.m. and 2 a.m., where she would repeat her inbox and dump it onto me. And so, the question I have is that, the biggest complaint we have in any relationship is that we don't have time for each other. And so why can't we seem to make time for each other at work? And so that's the premise of the book. And if you aren't making time for your teams, you have to ask why you're leading. And so people it's really interesting. The title in that chapter, people have a very strong reaction to that. I had one leader, I came off of a very large stage at a large corporate company, and he ran up to me and said, I love this book, and I'm not emailing at midnight. I am saving the drafts and sending them all in the morning. And I said, okay, so if I work for you, do I open my inbox at 8:30 and see 30 emails from you? I sort of stopped, right? It's that same thing of like how email is broken and how many of these things that we email, can't we just have a conversation about it? Why are we
Right.
dumping stuff in people's inboxes?
And I
It's
get that
maddening.
sometimes a leader might just have an idea, thought, a question, just send it
Sure,
out but at the same time, there's a balance there.
there is.
I think that if you do make time, you can still email people.
Of course,
And
of
I
course.
think the whole idea of, hey, I'm emailing this to you at midnight, expecting you to respond is one thing. However, emailing it to you while I happen to be awake and working, you don't need to deal with this right away, I think is reasonable. When you were emailed at midnight, again, between 10 and p.m. and 2 a.m., was it expected you would respond during that time?
She never told me not to respond, but that was the only time I could get with her. So I did. So this is the danger when the person who has the power in the relationship is emailing, and then you're going back and forth.
Yep. Wow.
And it reminds me of what Microsoft's recent study about the second shift. How many people are now logging in after 8 p.m., 9 p.m. consistently? So what I'm not saying is, listen, when you're
Don't wait,
growing in, yeah,
reverse for a moment. Tell
yes.
me about the Microsoft second shift. This is very intriguing.
So there's a Microsoft study that came out not too long ago where they're monitoring how people are working, and over a third of people are logging in after 8 p.m. because they're not able to keep up with work during the day and the level of meetings, right? And so there's this whole second shift that's happening. And so the question you have to ask yourself is, if you're the leader who's consistently emailing, you're then starting, because for me, if I'm getting this email at that time, I'm responding, being the more junior person. Hey, I just had this thought, save it for the morning. But if you had the thought, then save it for the morning or put it in a Google Doc. I coach leaders on, I think about this. I've been the devil who emails at midnight. Just because it's the most productive time for me doesn't mean I need to dump it off of my plate onto yours. Can I wait to say it in the morning? Can I talk about it in a one-on-one? Can I put it on my list for a team meeting? If there's a project thought starter document we have, I had a thought, go put it in there, right?
Yep.
And so think about the ways you communicate as a team. And as you're growing and scaling a company, there may be times where you're working, a weekend, right? Something's happening with the customer, there's a crisis. I get that. But this idea that we're repeatedly doing it is what's broken. And listen, I've sold a lot of cereal, beauty products, SaaS software. I've never been a 911 operator, an emergency room medical professional, a crisis counselor. Nothing I've ever done is life or death. And so when we treat everything as urgent, nothing is urgent, right? Nothing is
Wow.
urgent.
Great quote. Great quote. And I believe that you can email somebody at midnight and just take an extra few seconds to preface a saying, you don't need to get back to me right
Sure.
away.
Sure.
And I think then that makes it okay, acceptable. Because I don't expect, and by the way, I feel really good about what you just said, because I have always told my team that, we end around 5 o'clock every day. And if something comes in at the very last minute, yeah, you might stick around for a
Sure.
half an hour or a little bit longer or whatever once in a while. If this is happening consistently, please let me know, because it should.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's great.
And I don't expect it. Now, I will tell the team that if we get an inquiry from a client, even if it's over the weekend, simply state back to them, I received your email. I'll touch base with you Monday morning when I'm back in the office.
Sure.
Because I don't expect us to have to respond to the actual email, but the acknowledgement of it to me is important, because I think, being in the speaking business and the customer service business,
Yes.
I think
Yes.
people at least want to know, hey, they got my message. We don't have
Yes.
to necessarily give them back the information. All right.
Yeah.
Let's go. I like this next one. The boss who didn't want to call me by name.
By my name, yeah. This is the boss who didn't want to call me by my name, so he renamed me Muhammad. And my full
Whoa.
first name is Mita Mallick, and for all the reasons you might suspect, it's been a source of anxiety, shame, joy, pride for me. And when I graduated from business school, I decided I'm going to reclaim my full name and not go by Mita Mallick. And so I worked for this individual and I had nicknamed him the sheriff. Every boss has a nickname in the book. And he was a well-liked bully and he had his network of deputies. And he decided very early on, he found my Achilles heel and it was my name. And so he decided not to learn how to pronounce Madhumita, which was fine, option of Mita. He decided he would rename me Muhammad. And he did this for, I'm embarrassed to say, a lot longer than I wish I had stayed. I mean, I was there and responded to a name that wasn't my own. Mohammed, get the sales samples. Mohammed, the customers arrived. Go and get them at security. Mohammed, are you coming to lunch? And what I think about now in that moment is where was everyone else that saw this happening? And I was a junior marketer, so I'm not talking about my peers, but where were his peers? Where were his boss that thought it was acceptable to do this over and over again? And it's just a reminder. It's like,
I
we
almost
spend
think,
too much.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's an HR issue. It
it's an
sounds like
HR
it's
issue. And it's also like,
degrading.
it is. And we spend too much time at work not to care about what's happening to each other. Right. So even if it's not happening to you or someone on your team, we should be looking out for each other and we should be intervening. It's like the New York City subway. You see something, you say something. Right. And that's how we protect our workplaces.
So did you not feel confident going to the boss and saying, hey, my name's not Muhammad?
I actually did that. So it's include that in the devil emails at midnight. There was one moment in his office I'll never forget where I said, I just would like you to call me Mita. And that took a lot. I was introverted and painfully shy early in my career. So that took a lot for me to say. And his response was like, "Ma, joke. Like, why are you making a big deal of it?" And I'm embarrassed to say, like, even as you ask me, I still cringe a little. There's still some shame in that. But what I learned from that experience is to say, well, don't stay in places where you're not where you're tolerated, right? And you're treated that way, but also to just look out for each other. And I hope to try to do that as a leader when I see things happening, not even on my team, but other people's teams, that I intervene and help.
So a couple of things before we take a break. Number one, this is a fun book to read. I almost feel like it's a little humorous at times. It
It
is,
is, yeah,
okay,
it is.
and it's meant. Yeah, I mean, you're poking fun at a very, very serious topic, and through that fun, we're getting incredible lessons. Just listening to you right now with these two simple examples, chapter 1 and 2, you're sharing a number of leadership ideas that we should all be taking into consideration. By the way, this is a checklist that we can be making of things we should not be doing. And in addition, as you take a look at what the opposite is, you know what you should be doing. So, yeah, I think this is awesome. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk about a few more of these types of bosses, and we'll be back in just a moment. Don't go away. Shep Hyken here with an offer that won't cost you a cent. You may have heard me talk about my annual customer service and experience research. We've surveyed thousands of customers matching the U.S. Census for age, gender, ethnicity, and geography, and we find out what customers love, hate, and want in a customer experience. What's the number one customer experience that almost every customer desires? What makes them come back? What makes them leave? Why won't they fill out surveys? What do they think of AI? Well, these questions and more are answered in the research. You can download the full report by going to hyken.com and clicking on the research tab at the top. Like I said, it won't cost you a cent, but it may make you or save you thousands and thousands of dollars when you understand your customers' expectations. Again, the website is www.hyken.com.
You're listening to Amazing Business Radio with best-selling author and customer service and business expert, Shep Hyken.
We are back on Amazing Business Radio talking with Mita Mallick, the author of The Devil Emails at Midnight, What Good Leaders Can Learn from Bad Bosses. Remember, what's happening on the inside of our organization is felt on the outside by customers, which means as a leader, we need to respect the people we work with, treat them in such a way. I refer to this as the employee golden rule. By the way, this applies to the highest levels of leadership.
Yes.
Managers, supervisors. The golden rule, the employee golden rule, is an offshoot of the golden rule we all know: do unto others as you want done to us. But the employee golden rule is to treat the people we work with the way we want our customers treated, if not even better. So, Mita, we have there are many chapters and many examples in your book. I know we don't have time to go through all of them, but what are a couple more of your favorites?
Yeah, let's talk about the napper, which is
The
a little bit more
napper
lighthearted but serious. So this was the boss who fell asleep in a meeting, large or small.
fell asleep in the middle of a meeting.
Fell asleep consistently. So there was a point in my career where I thought working for him, is he a narcoleptic? Does he have a substance abuse problem? Is he having a fight with his partner? Is he sleeping on the couch? Does he have young children? Like wondering why he would do this. And he sat in the cubicle next to me. And one day I hear him getting a call from a recruiter. He's taking at his cubicle, and I hear that he's making what he's making, which is twice as much as me. And I'm like, wow, like it is an example, extreme version of disengagement.
Mm.
And it's the quote that you know, which is your culture becomes defined by the worst behavior you tolerate. And there was the napping, but there was the loud and bold, I hate working here. This place sucks. And he was my manager. And it was the worst kept secret. And years later, I'm like, why did they let him stay? Like,
That
why
was
was
my
he
next
here?
question
Why
is
did they let
who?
him stay?
Yeah.
And so the backstory, because one of the things that's been interesting putting this book together is the empathy I have for bad bosses now, because bad bosses, I've been one and chances are so have you. And we are misdirected, hurt, might be lashing out in inappropriate ways, like some extreme, not so extreme. And so his backstory was that he was quite engaged and he was on track for a promotion, and there was a series of changes and he felt slighted and he could never get over that. But in the book, I include a really interesting question from Professor Michael Murphy of Harvard University. And it's this
Mhm.
question of, if you could ask somebody the following question, what a difference it would make, which is, what would it take for you to be happy again at work? What would that take, right? Because disengagement is just contagious. It affects your employee base and also shows up when you're customer facing, right? The fact that you just don't give a bleep about your job and you don't give a bleep about whatever you're working on. And so I wish more of us had the courage to ask each other that question when we saw this happening. When we see somebody, the light is flickering, they're just not interested anymore. Something's either happening in their personal life or in the work front. Do we have the courage to ask someone that question? Just because you're not meant to do great things now on my team doesn't mean you're not meant to do great things. It's just not here.
Right. I wrote a book called Be Amazing or Go Home. And
Oh, I love that title.
it was actually it's been one of my more popular books. But it was the title came as a result of a conversation I had with somebody that worked here, my personal assistant. She did everything for me. I say person, my business assistant. She did do everything for me, from handling client calls, scheduling, everything. She started showing up late to work every day. And I couldn't understand why. She was always on time, if not early.
Sure.
So I brought her in the office, my office, and I said, "Hey, what's her mantra here at Shepherd Presentations?" And she said, "Always be amazing." And that's always be amazing to our clients, teach our
Sure.
clients to be amazing to their customers, clients, guests, whatever. And of course, treat people internally and create that amazing experience I want them to have. Hence, treat people the way you want your clients treated or your customers treated. Anyway, it turns out that she moved, and she moved really far away.
Hmm.
And she kept leaving earlier every day, but she still kept showing up work because she wasn't late to work because she wasn't leaving early enough. And I thought, wow, I thought about it for a moment. I said, so here's the thing. Amazing people don't leave a little bit earlier. They leave a whole lot earlier, end up showing up early, and then they go the opposite direction, leave a little bit later to get closer
Sure.
on
Yeah.
time. And she goes, oh, that's a really good idea. I said, so you now have a choice. She goes, what's that? I said, you either need to be amazing or go home, meaning you
Wow.
got to show up
Yes.
on time because
Yeah.
you set the tone because you're working with me. And
Yes.
everybody says, well, if it's okay for the boss's assistant to show up late, I'm going to show up
Yes.
late too.
Yes.
And she goes, oh, that's a great title for a book. So I
Wow.
wrote it
There you
down.
go.
And she goes, I'll be here early tomorrow, I promise. And she figured it out. And I said to her, to your point on this, Mita, I said, you live now over an hour away. You're going to drive over an hour here in the morning and an hour
Hmm.
home. You've got
Yes.
kids, grandkids you want to be with in the evening. There's going to be a point in time that you hate the drive home, and therefore you will hate the job. You will
There it
not
is.
be happy here.
Yes. Yeah.
All I ask is that you give me advance warning that you're about
Mm.
to leave me, because
Sure.
you will. And
Yes.
she smiled and she goes, I don't know. Well, sure enough, we kept having the conversation monthly. Are you happy? Are you happy? And she said, Shep, I can't stand the drive. You're right. And it was time to find her a new opportunity. And she
Yes.
did. And we found the new
Amazing.
person to bring in and support me. So anyway, I just love sharing that because I'm drinking your
That's great.
Kool-Aid even
I
before
love
I
it. I
had it.
love it. I love it. We're on the same page. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Let's share another one.
Let's talk about toxic positivity. And this is the boss who was the cheerleader. He was the corporate Pied Piper. I loved him. People loved being in the office with him, the team, coaching, teaching, all of those, except he was just like an Instagram reel. It's like, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. You can do this. Keep going. Like rainbows, lollipops. And at some point, you're like, all this fades. And it came to a head with a customer issue, which is we had this big innovation that came out. It was a cereal launch, and I guess people were eating cereal for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I don't recommend that, but it was going gangbusters. People love this product. And what happens is we get approached by supply chain to say we can't make the product anymore. We're missing this key ingredient, which is going to be out for a while. Okay, these things happen. So you just can't supply it anymore, and you don't want to
Mhm.
disappoint your customers. He decides to rally the team, and he's like, "We're going to add $1 million to the forecast." And we're like, "What? We can't produce the product anymore." He's like, "We can do it. We'll figure it out." Rallies the team around this. I'll never forget this moment. Everyone's like, here are all the facts. This is not going to work. Doesn't matter. Adds $1 million. Fast forward, I'm sitting in my performance review with him. I don't get a merit increase. I get like not even a bonus to, cover my Starbucks addiction. And I get a low rating. And he's like, well, you missed the $1 million forecast.
Well,
And I'm like,
perhaps the supplier missed the ingredients of the cereal.
yes. And
I
I'm
mean,
like, what are you talking about? But that's really interesting because I'm not telling people to not be positive, to not inspire their teams. But there comes a point, particularly in a market we're sitting in right now, where things are changing and you have to be willing to revise goals. And so you have to say, I gave Mita this goal. There was this metric. We have to achieve this by the end of the quarter. The 10 things Mita needed. So are we
say
going
that
to
again, the
pretend to
10
like
things Mita
the 10
needed.
things I needed to achieve that goal? I only have four of those things now,
Mm,
whether that's like budget, whatever it is.
yep.
So are we going to pretend to bury our head in the sand and say this is the goal, we're not revising it? Or are we going to have an honest conversation with our teams and say, okay, maybe we get halfway there. Maybe we push this out. And to have those conversations, and also to your point, to not disappoint the customer, right? Like whatever's happening internally is going to show externally as well, which it did.
Right. I worked with a client who they're I guess for a fast casual restaurant chain, and their managers they all had goals. They had to reach the goal on average. It was financial goals over 3 years, not 1 year, because they
Sure.
realized there could be
That's great.
road construction that keeps people from turning into their drive, which means they lose a bunch of revenue because it's just not convenient to go
Yes.
there.
Yes.
So they recognize these problems. So they give them this much longer
I
runway
love
to
that.
achieve their goals. And in a sense, that's what you were looking for, is recognize what
Yes.
reality is and realize
Yes.
sometimes reality gets in the way of, a goal.
Absolutely. And, when we weaponize positivity, right, to
Yeah.
like almost guilt people or overly flatter them, and you're like, but I can't do it. And it's not because I'm not performing, and it's not because I don't want to. There are external forces. And sometimes we have leaders who surround themselves with yes people. They don't
Yeah.
want to hear
Mhm.
the hard
Wow.
truth, right? And so that's what
I
that
don't,
box is
I
about.
know I haven't gotten quite to my one thing question, but I want to get
Sure.
to chapter 13, who is all
Yeah.
about you, or that is
Yeah.
all about
Yeah.
you, and the boss who is grieving and couldn't show up for her team.
Yeah. I lost my dad suddenly in 2017. It was a phone call from my father that completely changed our lives. And anyone who
So
has,
sorry to hear that.
thank you. Thank you. Anyone who's been through a journey of grief, it's a long journey. And what happened was I went back to work, and I remember a weekend, my boss was like, oh, finally you got your mojo back. So there was this expectation that I couldn't be sad. You're not supposed to talk about your dad. It's like you got over the flu. You had the flu, you got over it. And I don't think we talk enough in our communities about grief, certainly not at work. We don't have the right bereavement leaves in place. Some people are doing the right thing by their employees, others aren't. And so my experience with grief was when you bury it, it's going to come in the most unexpected ways and explode. And so I had become the bad boss that I had talked about throughout the book. I was lashing out at my team. I was yelling at people. That's not normally what I do. I was micromanaging. I'll never forget, like an hour before, actually 30 minutes before a pretty big senior leadership team meeting, I'm like in the deck changing things that don't matter. I had no sense of control in my personal life, but this is what happens. You certainly can find control at work if you want to try to control your team, right? And then I was disengaged. I would disappear for days. And I really wish I could go back to that time. And it reminds me of how we need more vulnerability in the workplace to say, I'm actually not okay today. I'm missing my dad. So if I seem off, or sometimes, people might snap in meetings or people might lash out. It has nothing to do with the work. It might be something else that they're dealing with.
Right.
And I wish I had role modeled that more and had taken the time to grieve and asked for the time I needed.
Wow. Well, that honesty and bearing your soul to the world in your book, I think, speaks volumes of the type of person you are, and recognizing faults. It's not easy to do. So I applaud you for that. All right. We're down to the final question. Looking at this book, is there one last nugget of wisdom that you want to share about this book, and why should people run out and buy it today?
There's so much discussion in the marketplace on how to survive a toxic boss, how to survive the toxic workplace. I want all of us to look in the mirror and ask ourselves, what if we are that person who's stopping people from reaching their potential at work? And you don't have to be a Medusa, who's in my book, or the devil emails at midnight. It could be just a behavior that is impeding people. And so can you think about that one behavior? It doesn't have to be an extreme that you can work on, and then ask for help.
Yep. So look at yourself in the mirror and ask, am I one of these, or something else that even comes close to related to one of these?
Yes.
Great thought, great advice, great idea. The book is called The Devil Emails at Midnight, What Good Leaders Can Learn from Bad Bosses by Mita Mallick. It is a must get to today buy book. So let's do it. Mita, thanks for being on the show. This is why we call it Amazing Business Radio.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, everybody, that wraps it up. Another episode. We'll be back next week with another interview. Until that time, this is Shep Hyken reminding you to always be amazing.